I've got your Bibles out. I hope you do. Find one in front there. We're going to be going through God's Word, of course. Going to pick up where we left off. We're kind of in this dual account section here of the Gospels with Mark and Matthew writing very similar things. So Mark 8 and Matthew 16 again. I don't know if you want to keep your finger in one or the other so you can flip back and forth, but that's where we're going to be spending most of our time today. We've been, it's nearing the end of Jesus' time. We've talked about this before. Only about a year left as he's going to start making his way to Jerusalem. We've already seen that he's been leaving the land a little more now. He's gone up to Tyre. He's gone over to the Decapolis. The opposition is increasing and the rejection is rising up among not just the leaders, but some of the people now even. And he's spending more and more of his time just with his disciples, traveling away from Capernaum. We saw that he had that trip to Tyre and to the Decapolis, like I said, where he heals that Canaanite woman, her daughter of the demon in Tyre. And then when he goes over to the Decapolis, in the southeastern shore of the Sea of Galilee, that's where he feeds the 4,000. Jesus showing his disciples in this that his rejection by his people is not the end of the story. Right? This is all part of the Father's plan, that he's the Savior of the Gentiles as well, not just the Jews. In verse 10, you can see there in Mark chapter 8, and he immediately got into the boat with the disciples, and he went to the district of Dalmanutha. It's an unusual name. It's the west side of the lake again. Dalmanutha, Matthew says he returned to Magadan. That's where near the place where they landed after feeding the 5,000. When they crossed the lake, and remember Jesus walks on the water and they land, it's over in this same area here on the west side of the lake, south of Capernaum, part way down the coast to Magdala. Remember I mentioned that, where Mary of Magdalene is from. You might have heard the word Gennesaret. This is all the same area, the western shore of the Sea of Galilee, kind of to the north near Capernaum. Jesus is back in Jewish territory, not too far from his home. Verse 11, Jesus returns home from his trip to Gentile territory, and the Pharisees came and began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven to test him. Oh, this again, eh? How many times have we seen this? And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation." So, pretty quick trip home to Israel. Jesus gets home from a long journey. When he gets back to Israel, after the great reception that the Decapolis gave him, well, you can see in Matthew, the great reception. Matthew 15:30 says, when he was on the other side in the Gentile lands, in the Decapolis, great crowds came to him, bringing with them the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and they put them at his feet, and he healed them. And so the crowd wondered when they all began to see the mute speaking, and the crippled healthy, and the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they glorified the God of Israel. And Jesus goes from that reception from the Gentiles back to his own people, and what kind of reception does he get when he gets home? Verse 11, argument, testing, opposition. How disappointed, how frustrated is Jesus? How sorrowful is Jesus in this, at the state of his people? Verse 11 says, the Pharisees came to him, began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven to test him. A sign from heaven, a cosmic disturbance is what they're after. Call down the stars, darken the sun, do something spectacular, Jesus. Something that can't be counterfeited. That's their excuse, right? To disregard the plentiful, miraculous signs that Jesus has done. The healings, the casting out of the demons. They're like, hey, those are fake. Those are tricks. And if it's anything more than a fake sign or a trick, what is it? What's their excuse? It's the devil. He's using Jesus. He's in charge. Jesus is working for Satan to deceive us. Just like Pharaoh's magicians counterfeited the signs of Moses back in Egypt, they're like, that's all you're doing, Jesus. How about you do a real sign? How about you do a sign from heaven, like Elijah? On the day he confronted the false prophets of Baal, he called out to God for fire from heaven, and God answered, and fire rained down. They're like, do something like that, Jesus. Or how about Joel 2:3? He says, I will show wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood. How about a little of that action, Jesus? If you can do it. That's what they're saying. How does Jesus feel about what's happening here on the west side of the lake? Verse 12, he sighed deeply in his spirit. He's sad. He feels sorrow at the state of his people. Jesus sighed deeply. He's longing for what's to come, longing to see things change, longing to make this world right, longing to free his people and his creation from the terrible predicament that they're in. That word, that sighed deeply there, that's the same word as used in Romans 8. In this, for the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God, and we groan inwardly. That's it there. As we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. We groan inwardly. We sigh deeply to be set free. That's what Jesus is feeling. He sees the rejection happening, and he's like, I can't wait to solve this problem. I cannot wait to fix this. Did they really need another sign? Has Jesus not already given his people enough evidence of who he really is? Hey, remember back in the early days when Jesus visits Jerusalem the first time and he goes to see, or Nicodemus comes to see him? Remember that visit? What did Nicodemus already admit about the Pharisees in that conversation? He's a head Pharisee, remember? One of the highest ranking in the Sanhedrin, one of the highest ranking people in the land. What does he tell Jesus way back in the beginning when Jesus first appears in Jerusalem 2 years ago? Nicodemus comes to Jesus and he says, Rabbi, we know that you're a teacher come from God. For no one can do these things that you do unless God is with them. They know. They've known for a long time. They don't need another sign. They need to believe the signs that they've already been given. And Jesus knows, really though, that there is no amount or size of sign that can give them to convince them to believe in him as their Messiah and King. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation. And see in Matthew, he adds a bit more detail to this encounter. We'll flip over there for a second, Matthew 16. We'll see what Matthew adds for us. Matthew 16 verse 1 says, and the Pharisees and Sadducees came. Okay, we got another group here. Pharisees and Sadducees together in something unusual, to say the least. They're mostly opponents and even enemies. They both occupy a portion of the Sanhedrin. Probably the Sadducees would be a larger portion, Pharisees smaller. The Pharisees are the religious wing of the government. The Sadducees, they're the secular wing of the government. Pharisees are the conservatives and the Sadducees are the liberals. Pharisees are the supernaturalists and the Sadducees are the materialists. Okay, they don't believe in the resurrection. They don't believe in the supernatural. Those are the Sadducees. Both, notice, would rather side with their political opponents than side with Jesus. They've now come together in opposition to Jesus. Matthew 16:1, and the Pharisees and Sadducees came, and to test him, they asked him to show them a sign from heaven. If you're really God, they say, if you're really the Messiah, show us a sign from heaven. Matthew 16, verse 2, he answered them, when it is evening, you say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be stormy today, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. Jesus is like, you guys want a sign, eh? That's what's holding you back from believing in me. One more sign. Is that what you're saying? If I show you a sign from heaven, then you're going to repent of your sin and follow me. Is that it? You guys see the sign of the sunset and know what that means. And you guys see the sign of the sunrise and you know what that means too. You guys look at the sky twice every day and know what's coming. And now I have shown you and shown everyone, Pharisees and Sadducees included, you rulers of Egypt, sign after sign you have, but yet you have no clue about what's coming. That word interpret means to judge carefully, to evaluate something and then come to an informed belief. And Jesus is like, you guys will carefully judge the color of the sky. You'll evaluate signs of the weather tomorrow, but you can't see the signs of the times unfolding right in front of you. Verse 3 of Matthew 16, you know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the time. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah. Jesus is like, you guys want a sign from heaven, eh? No, you don't. The only sign from heaven you guys are interested in is what the weather is going to be like tomorrow. That's the only sign you're looking for from heaven. Jesus calls them evil and adulterous, and an evil and adulterous generation. What's Jesus saying here? This goes actually all the way back to the beginning in Israel, before they even entered the land. This is from the Song of Moses in Deuteronomy 32. Moses, they're on the verge of the promised land. It's been 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. Moses is telling them what's going to happen next, what their future is going to be, and it's not happy news, just so you know. Not good. And God knew this. Deuteronomy 32 says, but the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted heritage. He encircled him. He cared for him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. No foreign god was with him. He made him ride on the high places of the land. He ate the produce of the field. He suckled him with honey out of the rock, curds from the herd, and milk from the flock with fat of lambs. But Jacob grew fat and kicked. You grew fat, stout, and sleek. Then he forsook God who made him and scoffed at the rock of his salvation. They stirred him to jealousy with strange gods. With abominations they provoked him to anger. They sacrificed to demons that were not God, to gods that they had never known. The Lord saw it, and he said, I will hide my face from them, for they are a perverse generation, children in whom is no faithfulness. Moses told them that before they ever even entered the land. And here Jesus is saying to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, you're just like your ancestors. I've given you plenty of signs, and nothing is going to satisfy you guys. You're a perverse generation. You are filled with unfaithfulness. You keep saying you want another sign. You keep asking for more proof of who I am. You're all still an evil and adulterous generation. You're still just turning away from your God. You people who keep seeking more and more signs, my Father has given you sign after sign. He delivered you from Egypt with signs and wonders, and he has never stopped doing miraculous things for you, yet you still want more. You still say to yourselves, God has not done enough. He has not given us enough signs. Nothing has changed in you since the day of Moses. You people still are a perverse generation, children in whom there is no faithfulness. Matthew 16, verse 4. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah. Matthew adds this detail. Jesus is like, you guys have enough signs, an overwhelming amount of signs down through the centuries. No more signs are going to be given except one. One more sign is coming for you guys. And Jesus calls it the sign of Jonah. He's actually talked about this particular sign before in the story. Back in the earlier days, remember he was tangling with the Pharisees about their rules and their rituals for proper Sabbath keeping. One of the first times that Jesus calls out their hypocrisy in front of everyone. And it results in this, Matthew 12:14. The Pharisees went out and conspired against him how to destroy him. And so what did the Pharisees and scribes do next? They come to Jesus with the same excuse for rejecting him, for not believing in him. Not enough signs, Jesus. He's just been healing people right in front of them in the synagogue. That's what they're mad about, the healing. Then they do this. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered him, Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you. But he answered them, an evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Well, fast forward a year or so in the story. Has Jesus changed his mind? No, the Pharisees are still using the we haven't seen enough proof excuse for their disbelief. And Jesus is still saying, no sign but one am I prepared to show you guys. There is one sign coming, the sign of Jonah, my death, burial, and resurrection. That's the only sign I will give to my evil and adulterous, unbelieving people who haven't changed since I rescued them from Egypt. Matthew 16, verse 4, an evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah. So he left them and departed. This is not a question of evidence, right? Jesus has shown them more than enough already. Reality is, they don't want the kingdom of God. They want their own kingdom that they've built, the one they currently rule over. They want him to make their lives better, to affirm them in their positions of prosperity and power. They don't want what Jesus is offering. Jesus is offering a kingdom where justice is sure and certain, where righteousness rules and lies are condemned. That's the kind of kingdom Jesus is offering. Where the first are last and the last are first. Where the humble are exalted and the proud are cast down. That's what Jesus is offering them, and they don't want it. I hate to tell you this, but apart from the grace and mercy of God, that's you and me. I don't know about you, but I find that wanting my own kingdom more than I want God, wanting my plans for my life in this world more than his, it's pretty easy to spend a lot more time thinking about my agenda than his. God's kingdom is sometimes easy to forget about in the days of our lives. Is it not? Anyway, back to the story. Flip back to Mark chapter 8 for a second. We'll go through there. Mark chapter 8, verse 12. He sighed deeply in his spirit and said, why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation. And he left them, got into the boat, and went to the other side. He's doing a lot of boat traveling these days, Jesus is. He's just returned from his great reception on the other side of the lake, goes over in the boat from the land of the Gentiles back to Israel to find his people still rejecting him. He lands in Gennesaret again. Hey, just a couple of months before this, he had been healing multitudes of people right here, right in this spot. And the powers that be show up and they're like, hey, it's not enough. You haven't shown us enough. So Jesus, he gets back in the boat and sails away across the lake again. Pretty short visit. Ends up landing up near Bethsaida, around the place where he fed the 5,000. Okay, so they get in the boat, they go. Verse 14 of Mark chapter 8. Now they had forgotten to bring bread, and they only had one loaf in the boat, with them in the boat. Okay, does this not seem like kind of a random fact? Why does Mark and Matthew both mention this fact? The Pharisees and Sadducees demonstrate again their ongoing disbelief and rejection of Jesus, so they all pile in the boat and head back across the lake, and apparently nobody thinks to get some food. Nobody thinks to get some bread to bring with them. Mark says they accidentally have one loaf, like somebody found it under the seat or something, I don't know. But Matthew doesn't even mention that. Just that none of them thought to bring any bread. Verse 15, and he cautioned them, saying, watch out, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. And they began discussing with one another the fact that they had no bread. Okay, why is this lack of bread part of the story? Because it's the reason for the confusion of the disciples. That's why. They're heading out across the lake, and Jesus speaks up and says, hey, watch out, beware. Okay, of what, Jesus? Of what should we beware of? What should we be looking out for? Jesus says, the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. Or your Bible might say the Herodians. They've joined with the Pharisees and Herod in trying to get rid of Jesus. Now, everybody knows what leaven is. It's like yeast, right? It's a key ingredient in bread. So it seems like the disciples hear this warning about leaven, and they start to discuss this amongst themselves. They're like, what's he talking about? Do you know? No, I don't know. Do you know? I have no idea. Is he saying we should only eat flatbread? Is that what he's saying? Unleavened bread, Passover bread? What's wrong with normal bread? Why is he warning us about leaven? We didn't even bring any bread. Is he telling us to only eat unleavened bread from now on? That's the kind of thing that seems to be going on in the disciples' minds. Verse 16, and they began discussing with one another the fact that they had no bread. Verse 17, and Jesus, aware of this, well, of course he is. Right? Jesus always knows what's going on, what people are thinking, and Jesus is always trying to teach his disciples, to show them what's really going on. Jesus has got a lesson in mind in this, just like everything else. And he knows the confusion his warning has caused amongst his disciples. And he's going to ask them a series of questions now in order to clear things up. Verse 17, and Jesus, aware of this, said to them, why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? Do you not perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? The first question he asks, why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? Jesus is like, you guys are off topic here. Why are you guys discussing something that has nothing to do with what I just told you? Why are you guys talking about how much bread you don't have? Next question. Do you not yet perceive or understand? More like, do you not yet perceive and understand? Are you guys like the Pharisees and Sadducees and the Herodians in this? Do you guys still not understand what's going on? I get they don't, but you? Are you stuck in your mind like those guys are? Next question. Are your hearts hardened? Theirs are yours? Similar to the last one, are your hearts hardened like the rulers of Israel, refusing to believe, just like your ancestors? Remember back, if you guys have been here on Wednesdays at all, we've been doing Ezekiel for quite a while. What are the people like even in Ezekiel's time, in Babylon? Even after they find themselves living in exile, even after everything in their world has changed, they've been captured by the enemy, they still refuse to turn their hearts towards God. Ezekiel 3 says, but the house of Israel will not be willing to listen to you, Ezekiel, for they are not willing to listen to me, because all the house of Israel has a hard forehead and a stubborn heart. Jesus is like, you guys are not different? Come on, have your hearts not yet been softened since the days of Nebuchadnezzar? Aren't you guys different than the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Herodians and your ancestors? Verse 18, having eyes do you not see, and having ears do you not hear, and do you not remember? Another few questions here. Having eyes do you not see, and having ears do you not hear? Okay, again, are you guys like the Pharisees? Who see all that I've done, yet still don't believe. Who hear all that I have said, and yet still do not understand. This language actually, when the disciples heard him ask this question this way, would probably have jarred them a little bit. This is language that the prophets use to describe God's wayward people all down through the centuries of their existence. As Jerusalem is about to fall, even before Ezekiel's in Babylon talking, Jeremiah 5:21 says this, hear this, O foolish and senseless people, who have eyes but see not, who have ears but hear not. Even after Jerusalem falls and the exiles are in Babylon, still no change. Ezekiel 12:2, Son of man, you dwell in the midst of a rebellious house, who has eyes to see but see not, who have ears to hear but hear not, for they are a rebellious house. The exile apparently did not fix the problem. It did not change their hearts. It didn't open their eyes or open their ears. Here's a question. Why is this a thing? Why do God's people have eyes but cannot see, and ears, but yet cannot hear. Second question. What are the first two commandments? Should have looked this up. Anybody remember?
From the New Testament?
I got it, Lynn. Thanks. You shall have no other gods before me is the first one. Interesting. Second one, you shall not make for yourself a carved image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, and that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the sea. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. How does God introduce his law, his 10 commandments? Remember that? There's a line before all of that. It says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or worship one. I just rescued you from generational slavery in Egypt with signs and wonders that no one has ever seen before. The 10 plagues, the parting of the sea, the drowning of Pharaoh's army, the leading of them through the wilderness by a pillar of fire and cloud. And God says, stay true to me. That's what I want you to do. Trust only in me. And he got to go on to tell them, hey, if you do this, if you obey me, if you stay with me, you got blessings beyond belief. If you disobey, things aren't going to go very well. But if you don't turn to the gods of the nations, if you don't bow down to their idols, I will bless you and I will protect you. How do God's people do? Do they stay faithful? Do they stay away from? Do they keep at bay the idolatry of the Canaanites and the other nearby peoples? Hardly. While Moses is watching God write the law down in stone with his finger at the top of the mountain, what are God's newly rescued people already doing? Yeah, they already have broken the first two commandments. They've made for themselves a golden calf. Actually, better translation would be young bull. They've made a carved image and called it their God and are engaged in celebrating, in honoring this God that they have just made, which looks remarkably like the gods of Egypt, which God has just saved them from. Idolatry has been a problem from the very beginning. 40 years later, after the original generation is gone, Moses is again on the border of the promised land. People about to go in after 40 years of wandering. In Deuteronomy 29, Moses gives them the bad news. And he tells them, you have seen all the Lord did before your eyes, the great trials that your eyes saw, the signs and those great wonders. But to this day, the Lord has not given you a heart to understand, or eyes to see, or ears to hear. Despite all that you've seen God do right in front of your eyes, all that you've heard me as God's prophet tell you over the years, you still don't understand. You still refuse to look. You still refuse to listen. Does this problem go away as generations roll on in the kingdom of Israel? No, it doesn't. In fact, it gets worse, not better. What are the first two commandments again? Don't have any other gods before me. Don't make any idols. Don't worship them. Don't serve them. And when they get into the land, do they do any better at doing that than when they were on the road? No. Isaiah wrote, about 100 years, even before Jeremiah and Ezekiel, Isaiah 2, they are full of the things from the east and of fortune tellers like the Philistines. Their land is filled with idols. They bow down to the work of their hands, to what their own fingers have made. They are still breaking the first two commandments, still making and worshiping idols, the gods of the nations. Okay, why am I spending so much time on idolatry here? Well, here's the thing. Psalm 135, 15 to 18 says this. The idols of the nations are silver and gold, the work of human hands. They have mouths, but do not speak. They have eyes, but do not see. They have ears but do not hear, and those who make them become like them, and so do all who trust in them. Reality is, the people of Israel have become like the things that they've chosen to worship. They have over and over again turned away from the God that rescued them, and they served and worshiped the idols of their neighbors and the idols that they themselves made, gods of their own making. And they've suffered the consequences of their actions. Their eyes and the ears of their hearts have been made just like their idols, deaf and dumb. They're broken. Their eyes and ears don't work. They are deaf and blind to God. Their ears can't hear and their eyes can't see, just like the idols that they worship. That's what they've become. They have eyes, but they do not see. They have ears, but do not hear. Their hearts have turned away from the God that saved them, and so follow after the idols of this world. And so eventually God lets them have what they want. God's like, you guys won't look at me. You won't listen to me. You just want to be like the other nations. You just want your idols. Fine. Have them. Have your idols, but you're going to suffer the consequences because they have mouths but don't speak. They have eyes but do not see. They have ears but do not hear. And those who make them become like them, and so do all who trust in them. They choose to serve and worship dead idols rather than turn to the living God. It's blindness and deafness for the people, God says. Has this problem, this idolatry, this blindness, deafness problem, has this problem gone away by the time we get to this story today? In Jesus' time? Jesus and his guys having a misunderstanding about bread and leaven? No, we've already heard Jesus tell the disciples back in the early days. Matthew 13 says this. Jesus says, in their case, in the case of the leaders of Israel, in case really of the whole nation, Isaiah is fulfilled that says, you will indeed hear but never understand, and you will indeed see but never perceive, Jesus says. For this people's heart has grown dull. With their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have closed. Nothing's changed. The problem has not been solved in God's people. Still they have eyes but do not see, and they have ears but do not hear. This is a problem not just for the Jews, it's for everyone. Okay? Eventually, God lets everyone have what they want. That's not good news. Romans 1 says, for what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore, God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts. God gave them up to dishonorable passions. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them. Reality is, apart from God, this is what happens to me and you. This is what happens to humanity. We suppress the truth that's right in front of us. We ignore the God we know is there, and we choose the things of this world over him. And eventually, he lets us have what we want. Back to the story. The disciples, hearing Jesus' words, but not understanding what he's talking about. What have they just seen since they came back from being sent out? Remember, he sent them out on mission, 2 by 2 into the land to preach and teach and heal. They've seen Jesus teach and heal and feed 5,000 people in Israel near Bethsaida just several days ago. Then he walks on the water as he crosses the lake back over to Gennesaret. And then he heals a ton of people over there too. And that's where he teaches on the bread of life, explaining he's the new Moses with the new bread The bread that doesn't save for a day only, but a bread that saves forever. That's him. And after which, many disciples leave and abandon him. And then the Pharisees and scribes, they arrive with some more objections. Objections about washing this time. And Jesus then teaches on traditions and true defilement and what that is. And then Jesus leaves for Gentile territory where he teaches and heals and feeds 4,000 non-Israelites, other nations. And then he crosses back to Gennesaret again. And then he faces again more objections from the Pharisees and Sadducees. You haven't shown us an acceptable sign, Jesus. And then he crosses back over the lake back to where he fed the 5,000, and his disciples show that they don't understand still what Jesus wants them to understand. And he asks them, do you not perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, do you not hear? Are you guys not different than the Pharisees? Are you guys not different than your ancestors? Remember when the Pharisees were all upset about the hand-washing stuff? The disciples come to Jesus and tell him, hey, you know you made the Pharisees pretty mad when you said all that stuff. What does Jesus say? Let them alone. They're blind guides. Don't listen to them. They're just like their forefathers. They have ears to hear but don't, and eyes to see but they don't. Question though, aren't the disciples supposed to be different? Well, yes, they are. Matthew 13, verse 14. Again, Jesus telling his disciples what's going on. This is right after he said the statement about the Pharisees and the Sadducees, how they just have eyes to see but can't, and ears to hear that can't. Jesus says, but blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For truly I say to you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it. Things have changed. Jesus has come to fix problems no one else can fix. Jesus has come to open eyes and ears of the hearts of his wayward and faithless people. After centuries of not being able to see or hear what God has wanted them to know, everything is going to change. What the prophets have longed to see is finally happening. God is going to heal the blindness and the deafness that has plagued his people from the beginning. What did the Pharisees ask Jesus for? Verse 11 again, a sign. They're not going to get one now. They will one day, in about a year, the sign of Jonah. The Pharisees asked for a sign. They're not going to get one, but you know who's going to get a sign? You know, an awesome one. And these guys, or at least some of them, the disciples. But they're going to have to wait on that. This is just part of a longer story here today, when it's going to take a few weeks to get through. The Pharisees want a sign. Everyone wants a sign. What they all failed to grasp is that Jesus is the sign. It's not about what he can do, it's about who he is. Jesus is the sign from heaven. All these things that he's doing now are just pictures of what he has really come to do. Free his people, not just for one day. Feed his people, not just for one day, but feed them forever. Drive out the demons from the land is just a picture, because what his real job, what his real purpose is in the end, to cast down the powers of darkness forever. Not just to take back the throne of Jerusalem, but to establish his rule over the whole earth. That's what he's going to do. And these healings, they're just pictures. He's not here to just heal temporarily. He's come to heal everyone forever, both body and heart. To open blind eyes and open deaf ears so that anyone who wants to can see and hear the God that made them and loves them and wants them back in his family forever. Jesus has come to rescue them all, to rescue us from the blindness and deafness of our own fallen and broken hearts, from our attraction to the idols of this world and the idols that we make in our own hearts. Good news. The power of the idols of this world, the gods of this world, has been broken. Now light and life can come. Our King has come, and he has made a way where there is no way, a way to save and transform this broken world and to save and transform our broken, blind, and deaf hearts. The story will continue next week and the week after. As we close today, I just want to don't put your hope in this world. Don't put your hope in yourself, in your own heart. Put your hope in the only one who has come from heaven, Jesus, the only one who has the power to fix all of this, to fix all of us forever.